Welcome to Everyday Infertility. This is your host, Savannah Keys. In today's episode, I am going to be recording with my best friend, Katelynn Pfeiffer. We will talk a little bit about our background and how we've known each other for almost 16 years, how I shared my struggles of infertility with her, along with my IVF journey, how she supported me, and a lot more. So buckle up. This one will be a long one with lots of tears, but we'll go ahead and dive in. Okay, so I have Katelynn here, and me and Katelynn, for those who don't know, have been best friends for 15 years, and we actually met in middle school. We were both the new kids. I had just switched schools, and Katelynn had actually moved from a small town in Oklahoma to a little bit of a bigger town, and we both joined the softball team. What is funny is me and Katelynn were the two worst players on the team.
Smallest.
And smallest. I mean, we were like 4'9", maybe.
I don't know why our dads did that to us.
I don't know either.
So rude.
Soaking wet, probably 90 pounds.
Oh, no, I didn't even weigh 80 pounds going into high school. No. I was probably 70 pounds.
We looked so awkward, guys. We were tiny, could barely throw a softball. It was just absolutely horrible. So we bonded over being bench warmers.
And getting hit in the forehead and the knee with a softball.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We would just continuously get hurt at practice and in games because we were so uncoordinated.
So bad. It was so bad.
So then I actually was a year older than Katelynn, and so I went into high school. Katelynn shortly followed, and Katelynn ran track. So when I say uncoordinated, you're not good with hand-eye coordination. Neither am I, but awesome track star. I ended up cheering, and then in her later high school years, Katelynn cheered as well. So we were friends all throughout my last year of middle school. So I was in 8th grade, you were in 7th grade, and then high school, and then we actually split up for college. So since I was a year older, I had went off a year ahead, and then you went to Southeastern your first year and ran
cross
track.
country. Yeah, same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So she's a little track star. You were fast, though.
I mean, I was okay. I mean, I was good enough to run for college, but I wasn't like the best. I was okay.
So she was a little track girly. And we actually ran into each other at a house party. Was that your freshman year of college?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And were you already planning on going to UCO? Or...
I was wanting to move from Durant, like back up here for school.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, like you should meet some of my friends.
Yep.
At the time I already had a roommate, but you can move in with this girl I know. And from that point on, we were literally like inseparable. As our adult life.
Yep.
And after maybe a year or so, we actually moved in together. And that was some of the funnest times of our life.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, I think I was 21. You were 20. No,
you were 20 and I was 19.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're in our early 20s. We are figuring out bars, house parties,
lots
boys.
of house parties.
We started dating both of our husbands while we lived together. And it was truly just it was what, a year and a half that we lived together? It was like the best year and a half.
Well, I actually lived with you and Drake for like 6 months because he ended up moving in.
Yes. And so if you remember from earlier episodes, Drake we moved in together very soon. And he just kind of lived at our house.
Yeah.
I don't think he lived at my house for me.
No, because he definitely stayed for me. Not in the way that people are going to take that.
Because Katelynn would buy him breakfast.
Every morning I would bring home Chick-fil-A and put it in the microwave. And I would text him and be like, hey, before you go to class, your breakfast.
That's why Katelynn was the best roommate.
Yeah.
She was always like, hey, I got you Chick-fil-A. Hey, I got this. And I was like,
or hey, I got Papa Murphy's pizza.
Like, you spoil us. So we lived together for a little over a year and a half, and then Katelynn actually moved colleges for a third time. Yeah. But she didn't go too far. She was about 30 or 45 minutes away.
I just went to Norman. No big deal.
No big deal. So we finished out college, and then we've just remained best friends since then.
Yeah.
So in that time frame, I've gotten engaged and married.
Mm-hmm.
You got engaged and married and then had a baby, who my goddaughter, y'all, is 3 weeks old.
Oh.
So, all the tears. So anyways, me and Katelynn have known each other for 15 years, and the reason why I wanted to have her on this podcast is because when we talk about infertility and when we talk about babies, it is, you have to have a tribe behind you, and it is the same for infertility as well. And Katelynn has really been such a great support system for me, so we'll get into talking about how I shared my infertility struggles with her, really how she supported me during that time when we found out that we are going through IVF, similarly how she supported me, and really just this entire journey from a friend's point of view. Okay, so when we talk about when I first shared my infertility journey with you, there's not a clear memory that I have of like, Katelynn, we're going to start trying to have a baby. Hey, Katelynn, we've been having sex for X number of months and we're not pregnant. There's not that memory that I have. Do you have that?
No, I have a memory of you texting, or maybe it was a phone call, saying that you were going to go to that naturopathic doctor. I probably said that wrong.
No.
And you got some test results back that your thyroid levels were kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And that could be a contribution to why we weren't getting a positive pregnancy test.
Correct.
So they seemed very helpful that medication would work, and that was kind of the extent of it at that point.
Yeah.
Few months later, thyroid levels kind of leveled out, and things still weren't progressing in the way that we would hope for. I'm gonna cry. What the heck?
We are 7 minutes in, and this is her second cry set. It's okay, guys. She just had a baby, so her hormones are still
I was this hormonal before.
Okay, so yes, so we obviously were trying and not getting a positive pregnancy test. I feel it was probably towards the end of 2020, which was like the first full year of us trying, that I started sharing a little bit more publicly with friends.
Yeah.
And really that was just due to me being like, what the heck, why isn't this working? And you were super positive about it, but also what I loved is you just listened.
Yeah.
Part of that, and I don't want to like interject on why, but part of that is you weren't trying to have a baby at that point. You were just like, oh, my friend's trying to get pregnant. Like, what did you know at that point about like infertility?
Nothing. It was very uncharted territory. Very. I think like every day and every time we talked about it, I learned a little bit more of like, I'm very much the person that would replay a conversation in my head either after it happened or like before it happens.
Yeah.
And so I think like, how would like someone take this if I said this?
Yeah.
So you never want to be like, well, I'm sure like if you relax, it will happen. Like that's like the number one thing people say, and that's got to be so annoying because like that's not like there's medically like there's diagnosis for it.
Correct.
And so like it's not just a thing.
Yes.
And
trust me, I was pretty relaxed.
So I think for me, like just taking it day by day and like learning from you and really like listening to like your updates and phone calls from like doctor's appointments or your test results, or even when we did find out it was going to be more than just infertility and it was going to be IVF, I would get on Spotify when I would drive from Texas to Durant and listen to infertility podcast just to like learn more about it.
Yeah.
Just so I could be more knowledgeable and like know what to say or like how to help. And I think that when you, for people that are supporting their friends or family, when you show interest in something that is hard or that your people are going through, like that shows that like you're just as much involved as they are.
Oh, for sure. So when you say it's uncharted territories, at that point, did you have anyone in your life that was like struggling to get pregnant?
You, and then later on we found out that I'm gonna cry again. What the heck? That some of our other friends were, and then actually, after talking to like, I remember going on a girls trip with my mom's family, and my cousin had told me that they were struggling, or they
Yeah.
struggled in their early years, and this was years ago, and they were going to do IVF, but they didn't have the money for it, so they just ended up adopting from the state. But like, I had no idea that it was that common until
Yeah.
like you start talking about it more.
It's super common from what I have learned in my own experience and talking with others and just being in this world that when it comes up, you immediately think, oh, I don't know anyone around
Right.
me that has had similar experiences. But almost every single person I've talked to, once they have awareness, they are like, oh,
Yeah.
I actually found out that so and so or so and so or
It's
so and so.
almost like when you get a new car and then you notice every car like yours driving down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that it's not a topic that people
Right.
don't talk about. I remember being on Instagram and really, I think sharing about IVF was the first time I ever publicly said, like,
Yeah, you
oh,
called
we're
me.
struggling.
You called me and you were like, "Should I do this like on social media?" And I was like, "I think you should."
Yeah.
Like, absolutely.
And the amount of people that I know
Mm-hmm.
closely, family members, friends that I talk to, a handful of times a year.
People we went to high school with.
People we went to high school with, people that I've worked with. I mean, it was like people coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Woodworks?
Yeah.
Woodworks?
Woodworks.
And sharing similar experiences, whether they struggled with it and ended up having a baby, struggled with it and ended up adopting, currently struggling, whatever it may be. It was like the more and more that I talked about it, the more that I realized it's not that taboo.
Yeah.
People just don't share about it.
Right.
And in all honesty, I didn't share about it for a year and 7 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And during that time, I'm talking to family and close friends, but I was not talking to people outside of our circle.
Right. And when you did share, like, look at now how many doors you opened up to like make relationships with people that do know what you're going through.
Yes.
Versus like we can like emphasize and like be with you and support you, but like I genuinely don't know what you and Drake walk through every day because I've never done that.
For sure. I'm gonna cry. And so, being a friend who at that time wasn't personally trying, so it wasn't something that you had personal experience with, but also didn't really know anyone. How, when I would talk to you about this stuff, what would run through your mind? Oh my gosh. So many tears.
So many tears. It broke my heart for you because, oh my gosh. I can't even look at you.
Take a minute.
Just because I am like such a helper in any way possible and I want to fix things for people, and like this was one thing that like I can't fix for you guys. Oh, I'm still crying. And I still can't fix it, but I know that obviously there is a plan and God has a plan, and
for sure
there's plans to move forward, but that was the hardest thing for me. And I knew like every time we would talk, I couldn't let my personal emotions for you and Drake get in the way, because like as hard as it is for me to be like the quote unquote strong person, because we're 14 minutes in now and I've cried 15 times. I knew that that's what you needed, and so like I just had to like you said, just listen. Like I literally would just listen, and if it was you teaching me or you calling to cuss and cry and vent, like that's what we did.
Yeah.
And so that's just I just would listen.
So, I can think of hundreds of calls of me calling you and just venting, especially in the earlier days before we found out about IVF.
Yeah.
And you never, just sat on the phone and cried with me.
Right.
But you let me cry on the phone a lot. And I know that had to have been hard for you.
Yeah.
How did you kind of put on that brave face?
I truly have no idea. I think it's like one of those things when you're in the moment and like fight or flight takes over, and I was like, I have to fight. Like, I have to fight for her. Like, I can't, like...
I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, it's in any situation in life, you know, I think back to when Drake lost his grandparents, and he was an emotional wreck. And, you know, I had cried as well, but I couldn't sit there and cry at that same point. I had to be the strong person for that. So I totally get that.
Yep.
So what's interesting is the weekend I actually found out that we were going to have to do IVF. You were here, and I probably should have started this out. So Katelynn and her husband actually live in Texas.
Yes. Sad.
And I literally do everything in my power to get her to move to Oklahoma.
Yes.
But for those of you not familiar with Oklahoma and Texas, she's about 3.5, 4 hours away.
Yeah.
And it just so happened to be our housewarming party the weekend after my HSG, which is where I found out that my tubes were blocked.
Which was like the worst thing in the world.
Truly.
Yeah.
I remember texting in our little girls group text, and you all knew I was going into this procedure, and I texted you afterwards, and I think I said something like,
that was the worst fucking thing in the world, I'm pretty sure.
Like, my heart is broken, horrible news, tubes are blocked, here's what the doctor said, we're waiting to go to the OB on Monday. What's going through your mind at that time?
I mean, again, like, just, I was very hopeless, and I think I was scared because, like, no one knew what that would look like, right? Because none of us were familiar with IVF at that point in time. Nobody knew what it would look like for you moving forward, yours and Drake's marriage, our friendships, because obviously, like, what we did learn down the road is with IVF comes medicine and shots, and that means doing shots at dinner or skipping out on things, and, like, your whole life changed, and it got a hell of a lot more intense than we ever would have imagined. So, again, very uncharted territory until we learned, and did we make mistakes on what we said or how we supported? Yes, but lessons were learned, and, like, I think we still learn lessons every day on
for sure
how to help or what to say.
For sure. What was, and I'm gonna cry. What was super helpful for me is I'm in a group text with about 8 or 10 of you know, my girlfriends that live here in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa and Texas, and it's how we all stay connected. And I had texted them about the HSG, and then I had saw most of them at the housewarming party. And what was super helpful for me in those coming days was that you all were super supportive with the text message. Oh my gosh, Savannah, I'm so sorry. Let us know if you need anything. And there was no, have you tried this, do this. My friend Susan's wife's mom's daughter's brother did this. It was none of that. It was just, we're here if you need anything. And then that weekend we had our housewarming party. And I remember, this is like the one thing I remember, and not in a bad way.
Oh, I'm nervous.
We were sitting in my closet, and for those who don't know, I have eyelash extensions. And if you cry hard, they're ruined. Like, they are little spikes. They just clump together. You can't brush them out. If you do, they get ripped out. And we're getting ready for my housewarming party. And Katelyn's like, are you going to do something about your eyelashes?
I do not remember that at all.
And I was like, Katelynn, I just cried for like 24 hours straight. And you were like, oh, I'm so sorry. Can you like get a fill or something? And I was like, oh my gosh. And so anyways, it ended up that we were all sitting in my closet before the party.
Always, for whatever reason.
Always. All serious conversations like take place in my closet. And it was me, you, and Blake sitting in my closet. And I joke about that, but it turned into like you two asking like, so what's next? And if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay, but like, what can we do? And that's when I said, we're going to go to the OB on Monday. Here's what we think our options are. I don't know what happens next.
Nobody did. I mean, truly. Like, it was, like, terrifying.
And so we actually, and I was very proud of everyone. No one asked anything that weekend. We had an amazing housewarming party. Very fun. But then that following Monday, I did go to my OB and found out that IVF is the journey for us. So again, I text all of my friends and update them. And to me, the most heartfelt thing is you all sent flowers. I'm going to cry. But in that moment, no one could have said anything, done anything, fixed anything other than that.
Yeah.
And that to me, and I'm not a flowers person.
No, you're not.
At all. But I remember me and Drake were sitting in bed and I am like scream crying and the doorbell rings. And I am like, who is at the door? And it's the 21st century, so we have a Ring doorbell. And I look and I remember it's this older lady like holding this huge bouquet of flowers. And I even in that moment is like, this is for the wrong. I don't know why. Every time I get flowers delivered, I'm like, this is not for me. Anyway, so Drake goes to the door and he brings them and he's standing in the doorway of our bedroom and he opens the card.
I'm gonna cry.
And it just said, we love you. We're here for you. Love the girls. And in that moment, my tears went from, oh my goodness. My tears went from poor me to I can do this. I have people behind me who care for me. None of us, to your point earlier, which is perfect, none of us knew what this was going to look like moving forward. Yeah. Not a single friend in my friend group
had gone through
this or really knew anyone at that point close to them except for Kim. She had known someone. So this was all uncharted territories for us. But that moment was just a core moment of like, okay, I can do this as long as I have the right people behind me.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you all sent those flowers, I can imagine you all take me out of a group text. And what is that conversation?
It was basically, I think Ashton was actually the one that was like, let's send flowers. And everyone said, yes, absolutely. And that was kind of like the extent to it. Just like, we're not gonna like pry, we're not gonna push. Like, we know like how you get when you get upset, you like grieve something very hard and very harsh. And then you're like, okay, I'm over it. Not over it. That sounds bad for this topic, but you basically like, you're gonna cry and scream and then you're gonna put your big girl panties on and you're gonna take it head on. And I think that's what you've done throughout this entire process.
Oh, for sure.
And so we basically were just like, this is a good way to like show that we are here, but not physically there to like, bombard you.
Yeah. So then me and Drake start on this process, which is lots of doctor's appointments and, really figuring out what the next steps look like. As a friend, you talked about listening to podcasts and researching, and around this time, you had other friends going through similar journeys. What did you do to kind of familiarize yourself with what IVF is?
Anytime you would call, like, from a doctor's appointment, and if I didn't understand what it was, I honestly would just Google it, just to learn more about it. Immediately would get on like Pinterest or Etsy and be like gifts, like trinket gifts for like people going through IVF. I bought so much stuff.
Katelynn, we talked about love languages on the podcast with my husband. Katelynn's love language is gifts.
Yep, I do. I remember when you called me and you were like, okay, doctor said game plan is this. We are going to start our medicine. We're going to transfer our first transfer sometime in November. We'll find out sometime in December. And I was like, okay. And I bought you a necklace that had a mustard seed in it.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna cry. And it came with a little note, of course, that was like, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, like, God will move mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And then socks that said, like, wake and pray. It's retrieval day or transfer day. And then a card that I actually found with my friend that was also going through the same thing. And it was IVF bingo, or infertility bingo. And I remember sitting in the store with her and just tears in my eyes because you had checked every box on that fucking card. And it was terrible. But also at the same time, like, bingo, when you get a bingo or when you black out, like, you win, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if we check every box, like, something has to happen in the end. So, like,
yeah,
it's gonna happen.
And, you know, it is very rare. So, I'm your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Your other best friend ended up going through an IVF journey as well. And, oh my gosh.
Way more common than 1 in 8. Way more.
It is. Yeah. And it truly feels like that. And so, you know, so many people go through life and they may come across a handful of people going through IVF.
Yeah.
And I truly think, and this is why I wanted to have this episode, because you got thrown in head first to the deep end.
Yeah, it was, I mean, was it hard when it was just you? Yes. Did it make it a little bit harder when we found out that our other friends were going through it? Absolutely. I mean, those, you, all 4 are our people. Like, truly, you 4 are our people. And we talked about this earlier today in the car, and this was something I had to remind myself throughout the entire process of everything, is that we were friends before you both got this diagnosis.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I had to remind myself that even though every conversation that we had wasn't an update on how things were going in your fertility journey, like, I had to be okay with that, because when you both wanted to update me, or when you wanted to update me, you would. And we were friends before, so we have that friendship still.
Yeah.
So you can talk about things besides infertility or IVF. And I would just kind of, like, keep a mental log every once in a while if I knew it has been, like, a week that you hadn't said anything, and I would just be like, hey, how are things going? Not like, hey, how is IVF? Or, hey, how is this transfer going? Like, just, how are things going? So it's an open question to where when you want to answer, you can.
And as someone going through infertility, because you would do that and a few other friends would ask me very similar questions. Just, how are things? How are you? And I loved that, because if I wanted to talk about it, I could be like, oh, you know, things are really going great at my last doctor's appointment, blah, 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 blah. Or, hey, you know, things aren't really going well at my last doctor's appointment, or the medicine, or whatever. I could decide to share those feelings at that point in time. If I didn't want to talk about it, I'd be like, oh, you know what? Today sucked. Work, you know, this happened at work. I did this. I went and so that, to me, is really one of the most underrated ways of supporting your friend.
Absolutely.
Is just being there for them.
Yeah.
Of, hey, how are you today? If I wasn't going through infertility, you would still probably ask me that as a friend.
Yeah. And
so it's a simple question of, I'm here for you, how are you? Or, I'm here for you, how was your day? Yeah. And you don't even have to make it so, like, I'm here for you. Just, how are things?
Yeah.
And I can decide to share or not.
Yeah, because going back to, we have a friendship before this happened. For 15 years. I mean, for 15 years, we've talked about the dumbest things.
Truly. Truly. And that is something I have also, being in this community, talked with a lot of people who are on your side of the fence. And there have been situations where they have experienced the opposite with their friends going through infertility, where it is every single conversation.
That can be dreading on the person not going through it too.
Correct, because you don't always know what to say.
Right.
You don't fully understand what's going on. And so, as much as the supporting friend in the situation does have to have that awareness of like, hey, it's been a couple weeks. Have I like reached out and checked on them?
Right.
The person going through infertility, as hard as it is, also has to be like, hey, I'm, talking about this 100% of the time.
Right.
Have I asked my friend how they're doing?
Yeah.
Because it's life. Everyone has their own struggles. And so I would also kind of keep a mental log of, hey, the last 2 times I've talked to Katelynn, all I've talked about is IVF.
Right.
How is her life? How's her first year of marriage? How's her job? All of these other things. And so I think the self-awareness game has to go both ways.
Oh, for sure.
Because to your earlier point, you don't know how IVF is going to affect your friendships, your marriage, your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that self-awareness of, am I hogging all of the conversations for myself? So this one's fun. So you are actually a medical assistant.
Yes.
And so you work with needles and scalpels and things in the medical industry. And what's funny is before I found out I was experiencing infertility, I vividly remember you trying to stick a needle in my arm to practice numbing.
On my birthday, I was going to numb a mole on your leg with lidocaine.
She is a sick freak, guys. She was like,
please,
let me do it. And I was screaming bloody murder.
Yeah, she did
Terrified.
not like me. But it also this lidocaine, that like burned so bad. So bad.
Yeah, why'd you want to do it to me?
I had to practice. It helped later on down the road. You let me do one of your IVF shots.
And so, later on down the road, Katelynn actually did get to do an IVF shot, and I feel like that was a fun, maybe shouldn't say fun.
I thought it was.
That was a good way to include you.
Yes, I felt like I was like helping on the way to baby keys. I was like, well, I played a part. Like I did, like when that baby comes, I'm gonna be like, I did that.
I gave your mom one shot. But I do feel like whether it's including your friends in the updates and the conversations and making sure that the support of friendship is going both ways, there is a really great way to involve your friends. And I feel that I've taken a very educational route with my friends, which is when I've wanted to update you all with stuff, it is, hey, I went to the doctor, we did this, which includes or means blank. Yes, and I would really keep you all involved in my life. But things do change, and there were times where I did shots at dinner, and I would travel with medicine, and we did have to plan around that. Yeah. As a friend, how do you support those life changes?
I am a people pleaser, so this one's hard because if you're not, I think in everyone's life they should be a little bit of a people pleaser.
And what's funny is, as her best friend, I am like the least people pleaser on the planet. So we mesh well.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you should fold to everything, but for example, my baby shower weekend, the boys wanted to go watch the OU game. We ended the baby shower, but Savannah had a shot she had to take at 6:30, so we went home and we just hung out for a little bit. And I don't mind that because like, again, I'm just kind of like go with the flow. Like I always have been. People pleaser in me, damn.
But it is nice because as someone going through this, you do feel like an inconvenience.
Well, and I'm sure it's stressful too because you're like, I have to do this, like my medicine has to stay refrigerated, I can't forget it, like I have to draw my shot up, it takes more than just like 1 second, and I like you said, you don't want to be an inconvenience. Yeah. And in my mind, if I can take 1 ounce of stress off of you, because obviously that is not good for your body in general, then like I'm going to do that. I'm just not pressure.
Absolutely. So when we talk about, and I know this has been pretty IVF specific, but I think it goes for infertility in any ways.
Absolutely.
Being there to allow your friend to share when they want or don't want, And I'm not saying you have to be a gift giver, but it doesn't hurt when,
Right.
I'm stabbing myself with needles. Katelyn's sending like cute little cards and socks and all of these things. But, these are the things that I want people to understand. It's okay to do as a friend.
Right.
A lot of the gifts that you sent me, I didn't know about. They would
Right.
just show up on my door.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be like, go check your mailbox, go check your front porch. And those are great things as well.
Right.
But really, at the end of the day, it's just being the same friend that you were. You were my best friend before this, and we've been through a lot. We've been through breakups. We've been through, lots of things.
Life.
We've been through life, a loss of a job, you moving.
Parents getting divorced.
Everything. And so, I think a lot of people on the other side of it, they overthink it.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do I support my friend?
No, you're just their friend.
Correct.
Just like you were before.
It is literally the same thing. If, you lost, your grandma.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just drop everything and you're like, I'm here if you need me. I'm a phone call and text away.
Right.
I'm not a gift giver. If I was, I would probably have sent you a gift. But it's the same things. And as friends for 15 years and, hopefully another 15 on top of that and over and over and over again, you're going to go through a lot more stuff.
Oh, yeah. We are just getting started.
Yes. And so the support, what I want to really emphasize is any type of support is great. And I'm not looking for you to have all of the answers.
Right.
When I come to you and vent, I am not looking for you to be like, well, Savannah, on page 14 of Google, it said to do this, and if you do this, and I actually don't want that.
Yeah, I'm not your doctor, so why would you?
Correct.
Yeah.
I want, the best thing for me is you to be like, yeah, you're right. That sucks.
I also am an escape for you to get away from that.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for an answer. I'm not looking for a solution because the unfortunate part is no one can give me that.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for you to say, you're right.
Yeah.
That freaking sucks.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I'm here if you need a call or a text. Yeah, you're right. Sit in your bathtub, eat 4 bean burritos from Taco Bueno while you drink a bottle of wine and scream your lungs out. Like, do it, girl. I'm here for you. And that's all I need.
Yep.
So,
I think for sure just the best way to really support is being a listener and being there, and then also just being a little bit more aware once your friend does share their diagnosis with you. And that might be like I know definitely it's opened my eyes. Like, I don't ask any of my other friends, like, so when are y'all going to try to have kids?
Yep.
Like, you just have to be more aware.
And you've mentioned, like, self-awareness has been a big thing.
That, I think, is the number one thing. Just because you have a medical diagnosis that makes it harder for you to have a child, like, doesn't change you as a person. And
Correct.
It doesn't change me, but I have to be aware and more sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Because it is a medical diagnosis. It's something that you can't help. And
Correct.
I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, it's been X amount of time, like, why aren't you guys getting pregnant? Like, and I think that taking that in our friendship to even strangers, you just don't, it's very personal. You just don't ask those questions. And I think that is like the biggest thing that people need to learn, especially in today's world. Like, it is way more common than 1 in 8. I have 2 best friends that went through it, are going through it.
Yeah.
And you just have to be more self-aware.
Yeah. People always say, oh, I never know what to say, or I never know if what I'm saying is the wrong thing. And at the beginning of the podcast, you said things have been said and lessons have been learned. I actually feel like you have done a really great job of never, as people say, like, put their foot in their mouth. But you are also someone that thinks very carefully about the words that you say. Asking someone when they're getting pregnant is a big one. So so one thing that you've never done is you've respected if we wanted something to be private,
Yep.
we would keep it private. And you would never pry or ask. And surprisingly, I've actually had people
Really?
ask.
Oh.
Yeah, and sometimes it's strangers on Instagram. Sometimes it's people in our life. But those are things that I think kind of fall into that category of like, don't ask.
Yeah.
Don't put your foot in your mouth. Like, if someone wants to share any part of this journey with you, because
Right.
it is incredibly intimate,
Yes.
they will share that. And so you've done a really good job of keeping the questions open-ended, or like, certain stuff I'll share with you. So if I told you, hey, I'm going to this doctor's appointment on this day, you'd follow up with me.
Yeah.
That's not prying. I told you I was going.
Right.
And I'm going to follow up with you anyways.
Yeah.
So, we will do an entire episode on pregnancy announcements. But don't cry. So me and Drake started our journey of trying to conceive in 2020, and Katelynn got pregnant in 2022.
Yep.
And so when we talk about friends supporting friends, why are you crying?
I don't know.
When we talk about friends supporting friends, part of this is that people struggling with infertility are on a different timeline.
Right.
And there's not a lot of about your own timeline.
Right.
No one can see the future. And so, part of this journey, I always look at it as I've been on my infertility journey for 3 years.
Yes.
For 1 whole year of our friendship, you were absolutely not trying. For another year, you were married and you had a timeline of when you wanted to try and get pregnant. And then for, basically another year, you tried, got pregnant, and had a baby. So supporting a friend, being on the other side of things, of like, you've been pregnant, you've had a baby, does that change anything?
For me, on how I feel about, like, IVF?
No, for, like, maybe how you support a friend going through infertility, or, like, do you feel like you have to watch what you say or anything like that?
No, because, and this is something that, like, I definitely want to, like, talk about in the next episode. There is room for both people to exist, always.
For sure. For sure.
And just as you feel like I have done a good job of not putting my foot in my mouth, you have been a phenomenal supporter. Tears again. Going through one of the hardest things in your life and supporting your very best friend going through something that you want so badly. Like, I don't know how, again, like, your strength is amazing for doing that, because of course, everyone always says, like, hindsight's 2020, I could never be that strong and, like, do that. But it's just, like I said earlier, like, fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
Like, I had to fight for you, like, you fight for me when it's hard.
Sure. For sure. And that's something, back to the whole support is both ways.
Yep.
I have heard the unfortunate stories of friends, whether it's 2 friends, multiple friends, whatever. One is going through infertility, one isn't, and the one going through infertility cannot be happy for their friend.
Right.
Or doesn't share the same support. I can't choose who gets pregnant and who doesn't, because I would obviously choose that I would have been pregnant way before now.
Right.
But, that doesn't mean I shouldn't support you.
Right.
You are my best friend. No matter how much pain I have in my life, why would I not be happy for you?
Right.
And so when we talk about this, support goes both ways. You've done a really great job of supporting me and being there for me. And I do have to consciously remind myself, like, have you asked about Katelyn's pregnancy and how she's feeling? Like, because let's be honest, anyone going through infertility, they don't want that topic brought up. They don't want to talk about it. It is a constant reminder every baby announcement, every baby shower, every time you're in a grocery store and you see someone with kids. for the people out there that don't have infertility, it's like your analogy of the car.
Yeah.
I see someone with a baby and I'm like, how cute. I want that to be me so bad. And some people out there not going through infertility may be like, oh yeah, I mean, I've always had that feeling. But imagine being like in a snow globe and you're like, I want that feeling so bad, but I am stuck here behind this glass and it feels like nothing I do I can get out and like obtain that, touch that, have that, anything. And so, I mean, I'll just say it, maybe I'm the bad guy, but as someone going through infertility, I don't want to talk about someone's pregnancy.
Right.
I don't want to.
I don't blame you.
I don't want to hear anything that's not super positive because to me it's a kick in the teeth.
Yeah.
And, you know, seeing you have your baby, ecstatic, over the moon for you. But it's in the back of my head like,
absolutely.
Wow, when is that going to happen for me? And so as hard as it is, someone going through infertility, if that's your best friend, you have to put your feelings aside and you have to fight for that person. You have to, I would consciously be like, in the beginning, I would have to be like, whew, it's been a week or two that I haven't asked Katelynn how she's feeling. I need to do that. And I would have to like pep talk myself to do it on the phone with you of like, ask her how she feels and don't cry.
Oh.
But it got better. Towards the end, I'm like, how's your coochie feeling, girl? Like, how's your belly? What's going on? And so it's so hard in the beginning.
Yeah. Anything's hard in the beginning, though.
Anything is hard in the beginning.
You take it one day at a time.
But at the end, it didn't bother me. And I say bother me. It never was a negative, like, ooh, I'm mad Katelynn's pregnant and I'm not. It wasn't that. It was, you can ask someone else about their pregnancy. You can hear the details. And it gets better.
Yeah.
I'm not less sad for myself.
Right.
But it's that, like, you just kind of got to get over the hump. And it, I don't know. For the people going through infertility, you know what I'm talking about right now. And you're just like, yeah, okay, I get that. You have to get over the hump.
Yeah. But
it is that hump.
But we made room for both people to exist.
Correct.
And, like, yes. I don't know how to put into words for two friends in our situation to get to that point. But, like, if you're friends and you're genuine friends, it's going to mesh. It's going to happen.
That, I love the word genuine because I've had conversations with other women in this community and the stuff that they tell me that their friends say or do or ask, and I'm like,
it's not genuine.
Honey, that's not your genuine friend.
No.
I would never say that to anyone, let alone an acquaintance, a friend, or a best friend.
Right.
So it is also, and that's the unfortunate part, you are going to find out who's there for you throughout this process because it's hard.
Yeah. And
you are going to have to make life plans, you know, putting things on hold. As you said, you know, like missing out on stuff, doing medicine. Your life changes, but you really, truly find out who your best friends are.
Yeah. But it changes, but also we adapt too.
Correct. Yes. You couldn't have said it better.
Oh.
What do you think of your first podcast?
I think I was nervous for no reason because just like you said, right before we started, we're just sitting down to talk just like we were in the car earlier. And yeah, I mean, I think I cried about the amount I thought I would.
I actually thought you would cry more.
Really?
Yes.
Good.
What's funny is before we started recording this, Katelynn was like, I'm so nervous. Like, and I don't even know what you were asking, but you were like, what if I like say this? What if I cough? What if I do this? And I'm like, Katelynn, we're just friends. We're literally sitting next to each other. We're just talking.
Yeah,
and
but
she's like, okay.
Yeah, but you're famous now. So.
I am not famous. Oh my gosh. No. I thought you did a really great job.
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate you being vulnerable with everyone. I know this is not easy. I think you shared a lot of really great things in terms of how to support your friend and, you know, what to say and what not to say, and truly giving a little bit of insight of how your life is going to change as a friend.
Right.
And I say how your life is going to change. It's not like this huge transformation.
Right.
But things do change. And so I think that's been really great. And for those out there going through infertility, share this with people in your life.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be your best friend. It could be a family member. It could really be anyone. I think Katelynn has a lot of great advice. For friends who are on Katelynn's side, thank you so much for spending any amount of time listening and learning and growing, because the reality is, if you take 5 minutes to Google or to listen to a podcast, the funny thing is Katelynn actually was listening and sending me podcasts on infertility before I even ever, started on really the in-depth IVF journey.
Right.
And guys, if you all remember from my first episode, she's the reason I have this podcast. So, if you are spending any amount of time educating yourself on this topic for a friend or a loved one, you are already a best friend in the world. I mean, truly, that really means a lot. So, with all of that, thank you so much, Katelynn.
You're welcome.
You will be on many more episodes.
I can't wait.
So, thank you all so much. I appreciate the time that you've spent with me. Our next episode, we actually will be talking about pregnancy announcements and how to share that with your friend and, the support that comes along with it. So, thank you so much. If you have any questions or would love to reach out, you can reach me on Instagram at Everyday Infertility. You can also email me at everydayinfertility@gmail.com. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.